solitude, spiritual reading community, and says, okay, now that I've kind of found out who I am and what my purpose in life is, how am I going to go into the world and use my gifts to make the world a better place?
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Luciano Cast. On this episode, I sat down with Brian Plachta, the first author to visit the Luciano Cast as a guest. I actually ran into him at a coffee shop. We started striking up conversation, and turns out that he would make a great podcast guest. So we thought, and so he was. I had a lot of fun on this one. This is the first time we also kind of talked about maybe spirituality in a deeper way on the Luciano Cast. So a lot of first times here. Really enjoyed it though. I think it was fun. I think it was, more importantly, it was valuable. And I hope that, there's takeaways for you in there as well. And with that, please enjoy this episode. Oh, Mr. Plachta, thanks for coming on to the Luciano Cast today.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah. You're actually, so to be honest, you're the first author I've had on the podcast.
Oh, neat. Wow,
yeah,
cool.
so the first time I've had, honors on mine. The first time I've had, so usually someone's got like a company to promote or something, and I'll be like, yeah, tell us about your company, how can we get ahead of you, or how can we get in touch with you, but you've got a book to promote, and thank you for providing me a copy, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's called Finding Flow.
Yep. Finding Flow, Spiritual Practices to Reclaim Inner Peace, Balance, and Wholeness is the subtitle to it.
Yeah. So why is peace, balance, or wholeness important to any of us?
I think in this day and age, in our Western culture, whether we're religious, spiritual, or not, we're all looking for that inner peace. That connection with ourselves, our inner awareness, that balance in life. Balancing work, family, career, college, whatever it is. Looking for that balance. And the sense of wholeness is, who are we, human and divine. So those are the three key phrases, it seems to me, that all of us are seeking for. And so that's what the book is intended to do, is to find spiritual practices, practical things we can do on a regular basis to really develop those qualities, those virtues that we seek in our lives.
Sweet. Well, I definitely want to get into some of those practices.
Sure.
But one thing you kind of just said, which was, who are we, spiritual and divine, which is really cool. I think, maybe speaking for myself, I get that you forget about that connectedness. Definitely. Right. Sometimes the spirituality or divineness can seem like it's out there, right? Or that's for holier than I people, right? But kind of forgetting that it's in you, right?
Yeah, it is. There's that human part. Obviously, we have a body, we have skin, we have heart, and all the stuff that makes us stick as humans. But there also is this inner part of us, this divine part of us that. You call it your soul, your heart, your higher power. There is something, I think it's within our DNA that we're connected to, and the world gets so noisy that we get caught up in the human and the mental part of it. But as we recognize that we're really drawn to a divine part within us, that's when we experience that wholeness, the human and divine come together within us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's one of my favorite songs. It's like by a rapper named Russ, but he was saying, I'm trying to listen to what the universe is saying. I'm trying to get quiet. Like, so much noise going on. I'm just trying to hear what it's saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think that kind of comes in from within us, like we're saying, right? But then just one other flip side of that is, for me, like, the most divine thing is the ability to create.
Definitely. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And now you've created this book.
Yeah. In fact, it's interesting. Elizabeth Gilbert has written a whole thing on the divine muse within us. And what she says, she goes back historically, and that creative part of us, she calls the muse. And in the ancient Greek times, we weren't the geniuses. We connected to the genius, basically, that was outside of us, the divine muse, that higher power, whatever it is. And so, literally, as I'm writing the book, I have my divine muse is Tigger from the cartoon character. And so when I got stuck writing, it's like, okay, I put Tigger here. He's my divine muse. Okay, what are you trying to write in me? And I had this conversation, just to have a fun, playful aspect with the creative part of us, because I think when we try to write just from our minds or be creative just from our minds, it comes out a little stale.
Yeah.
But in that creative part, like you say, that's part of the divine within us. When we're in a relationship with that, all of a sudden there's a flow of creativity and inspiration that takes place where the human and divine, the muse within us is creating in relationship with us. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, because I think that when you're doing that, you're kind of not afraid to express yourself.
Yeah.
And that can only come from that creativity and purposefully not doing something that's just an intellectual exercise, right? Because then you're separating yourself from it, and you're maybe not creating as beautifully as you could, or as useful as you could,
and we
right?
get caught up in our ego then sometimes. When we're creating, like writing or drawing or painting or whatever our artistic talent is, we get stuck in our head. All of a sudden, we're performing.
Right.
It doesn't flow. Yeah, and the ego gets in the way. The mind gets in the way. When we're connected to the human and divine part, it's this is beginning to flow. Whatever it is I'm creating, and it's we're literally psychologically absorbed in the inspiration that's happening within us.
Yeah, a way that I like to look at it is because we hear all the time, get away from the ego, and in this context, it does make sense, right? Because you want something that connects to your spirit, not just the performative piece of our lives, right?
Yeah.
But the ego is also it's helpful in that it helps us get here on time, right? It helps us get a job or whatever, or survive.
Yeah.
But then when you get past the survival state, both socially and environmentally, now you're free to create. Now I feel like it's time to really, let go of that a bit and connect more into that spiritual side.
Yeah, many say, and I believe it's true, is that we're made up of mind, body, and spirit. And the ego is the mind, which is good. Having a healthy ego is a good thing. Like you say, it says, okay, I got to be on time for this. I got to brush my teeth, whatever it is. Having a healthy ego is good. But if that's all we're operating out of, we're missing the other part, the body and spirit part of us. So the three of them need to be connected, it seems.
Yeah. So you've got kind of 4 quadrants that we should be paying attention to that you outline in the book, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so we've got solitude, spiritual reading, community, and contemplative action.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So to jump back where those came from, basically. So there's a lot of talk these days about psychological flow. An artist, as we talk about, gets into the flow and they're creating, they're absorbed. An athlete is in the flow. And so there's a lot of writings, a lot of books about being in the flow state. But what I saw in my life as I grew older and studied to become a spiritual director and got my master's in pastoral counseling, I asked myself, isn't there such a thing as divine flow? Where we add to the psychological component, which is good, but we add the spiritual component. And so what I did is I literally looked at our spiritual giants, both ancient and modern. So people like St. Francis or Gandhi or more modern, Thomas Merton, Mother Teresa, Jesus would be another, from all faith traditions. As I studied them, I kind of put together my personal mission statement, my rule of life, St. Benedict would call it, which is what do I use as kind of a focus on how I try to keep my own personal life in balance.
Yeah.
And what I recognize from all these spiritual teachers and giants is that there were 4 lifestyles that they engaged in. So those were 1, solitude. They took time to get away from the noise of the world on a daily basis, to enter into the quiet, to connect with their own self, their inner awareness, and then however they experience God, the divine, the universe, they connected, it kind of got out of the way so that they could hear that whisper of wisdom, of guidance, of affirmation.
Yeah.
So they took quiet time. If you look at Jesus, I always he got up early in the morning and I could just see the disciples going, "Where's Jesus? He's over there on the mountainside talking to his dad." And it's same thing. Gandhi and the Buddha. He sat under the Buddha sat underneath a tree until he was enlightened. So it's that sense of pulling ourselves out of this noisy world and all of its distractions for 20 or 30 minutes every day, just to enter into meditation, contemplation, could be walking in nature, whatever's life-giving for us, just getting away from the noise of the world, particularly in our consumerism culture where, social media and TVs and everything and the news is hitting us. So that would be the first component and probably the most important is taking that time, for silence, solitude,
Yeah.
whatever fashion that's, that is helpful for us.
Yeah.
The second piece would be that spiritual reading. Reading the books of people that are a little further than us on the journey. When we were in elementary school, if we just read, Algebra 1, we wouldn't learn trigonometry and all the other aspects. So in the same sense, in the spiritual life and just our adult life, to always be reading someone that's a little smarter than us, a little further on the journey. Could be sacred scripture, could be books like Finding Flow, but just someone that's has had an experience of wisdom and God in their lives and is writing about that, so we can kind of look for the universal truths that are contained in those spiritual readings and writings.
Yeah, I call that studying the greats, right? What's lasted a long time, right? It could be things in the Bible. Sometimes for me, it's like The Art of War, the book, right? For me, it's like you could use that book. It's been around for thousands of years.
Sure.
You can use that book to wage war properly or make the best peanut butter and jelly sandwich using those rules of how to do things.
Yeah. And I think you're right. There's universal truth. I think that's the beauty of all of our faith traditions are starting to come together. We might use different language to point to things, but if you look at it, what's the universal truth that we're talking? Love is certainly a universal truth. Caring for each other, caring for the universe, the earth. I mean, we're all pointing to the similar universal truths, and I think that's, as you say, that's what we're looking for. Is what do the greats say about the universal truths that we can apply to our lives?
That's right.
Individually and as community, basically.
Yeah. So speaking of community.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So community is really about who do we surround ourselves with that nudge us to grow. People that are kind of look at us and say they mirror back to us who we are. They also help us get off when we're off the track. They'll point to us. So it could be a spouse, a spiritual friend, our faith tradition if we belong to a church, a small faith community. In my case, I became a spiritual director, so I also meet one-on-one with my spiritual director once a month to reflect back on my life and say, where's the movement of God in my life, and on a practical level, how am I being invited to grow? So a spiritual mentor. It could be a life coach. Many people, as a lawyer in my first career, I would hire coaches, professional coaches that would help me look at how do I, manage a staff? How do I, in the office, how do I deal with conflict? People again, but so that question is, who do we surround ourselves, as an inner circle of trust that will help us grow? And really looking at who's in that circle, and do we need to add people to that circle so that we can grow? You think if somebody runs for a political office, they surround themselves with a cabinet, basically, hopefully of wise people, that inform them. And why wouldn't we do that for our own lives?
And don't we want to govern ourselves, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah. Who are those handful of people that really help us grow? Sometimes we recognize there's people in that inner circle. In a loving way, we need to ask or kind of move away from, basically.
There could be.
Yeah, there can be people that really are not life-giving. They're negative, or they're always putting us down.
Yeah.
So, it's also looking at that circle of who do I need to move out of that circle.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Although, so kind of some tips that I have picked up, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it might not be so much as like, Luciano is a negative aspect. I need to sit down with Luciano and tell him, hey, sir, you're out of my circle. I no longer wish to be friends with you because you are negative, right? But it could be more so, like, Brian's a really positive person. I'm going to spend more time with Brian and maybe just less time with Luciano, right? Maybe one of these times when I typically call Luciano on a Thursday, I'm going to call Brian this time on a Thursday instead.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. It doesn't need to be this, I'm breaking up with you as a friend. Hey, you get off of my cloud type thing. It could just be that you decide, I'm going to put more of my energy into these other relationships that are more life-giving for me, definitely.
Yeah, kind of focusing on the good versus,
And then the other, in that community aspect, where does God fit in there? Is God in there at all? And again, not necessarily has to be my version of God or your version of God, but how do we relate to that divine part of of who we are, you know, and
Yeah.
where is our relationship with God, the higher power, our universe. You know, I have my best friend, a spiritual friend, you know, over the years, I've had, my wife and I have 4 kids, and as they grew older, you know, they were all my best friends during my lifetime, or younger years during my lifetime. But I noticed as they got busy with their lives and moved on, it's like I really didn't have a spiritual friend, you know, in my life. And so ultimately, you know, I kind of put it out to the universe, to God, God, I really need another buddy in my life that is on the spiritual path, not in a, you know, really crazy way, but is willing to grow, basically. And so my buddy Ralph is would call himself spiritual but not religious. And my gosh, he studies, and he's got all 4 quadrants, and we work out at the gym together and stuff. But so it's also looking at who do we need to add to that circle of trust so that we can grow. Yeah,
that makes sense. And I think part of it too is like that asking you shall receive, right? It's not so much that, okay, you know, let's say today's Monday, and you know, by Tuesday I need to find my spiritual pal.
Exactly.
It's kind of like, hey, where is that? Do I have that?
Right.
And you know, you might be invited in a direction where you know, are around that people or person at this point.
Exactly. Yeah, as I write in the Finding Flow book, one of the chapters on community is about how do you find a spiritual friend. You know, and I mean, it's, you know, I kind of give my journey of how I was recognizing, wow, as the kids got older, I was an empty nester, my wife and I, and began to say, boy, there's something missing here. And right, it's not like, you know, oh, I need this, and poof, they appear.
Thanks, God.
Yeah, exactly. It's more of you become intentional. This is what I need to add to my life, and so your antenna, you know, goes up to, okay, where you know, can I find somebody that is a good buddy, you know, along the way, or you know, I had one gal who's divorced and she's looking for a life mate, basically, you know, and so, you know, she's saying, and she's kind of like, oh, is that wrong to be seeking for, you know, another partner? Should I be single in my life? And I said, God's placed that desire within you for a life mate. So, you know, acknowledge it, that it's a good thing. Does it draw you closer to God or further away? Draws her closer. So now she's being intentional about, okay, I'm going to focus on, you know, joining some clubs or online dating things that will be helpful, you know. And so it's really that intention that it causes us to focus on what do we really want.
That makes a lot of sense. One of the things you had in the book was, you know, there was a point where someone told you to stop shoulding.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I should be doing this. I should be doing that.
Yeah.
But how about you just go towards what's life-giving?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
You know, I think it was like, you know, I should go clean the garage. I should go pick this up. I should go donate my clothes.
Yeah.
And your wife was like, well, what would be life-giving?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that you said that you should do was take your sons out fishing. And you're like, well, what I want to do is go take them fishing.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go take them fishing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Having that kind of intentionality where you're going towards the things that really do give you life.
Yeah. It's interesting because that whole thing about shoulding, as I write about in the book, you know, I kind of grew up with that, you know, kind of
Don't we
an
all?
overachiever, you know, we're all competitive, and I should do this, I should do that, And you know, maybe that's good early on in our lives because it causes us to work hard, and, you know, excel and you know, strive.
Give you structure.
Yeah, structure. But after a while, it becomes a shadow side of ourselves, and so we are actually in my
Or even
life,
performative.
Yeah, I don't know what to do. I should do all these things, and so it's actually Sister Nancy, one of our instructors in the spiritual direction 3-year courses that we took. She said, "Stop shoulding yourself." And I'm like, Nancy, what do you ask yourself? And she says, what would be life-giving right now? Because wouldn't the Creator want us, the source of our being, want us to be happy? And so that, you know, God's not this person shaking their finger, you know, you should do this. It's more, what's life-giving for you right now? That deep desire. In fact, Phil Shedrecki, one of the guys I quote in the book, wrote a whole book on the spirituality of desire, that there's nothing wrong with that deep desire within us, that we can actually listen to that and follow it. Again, not that it's, you know, just purely pleasure, it's a deeper sense of desire of this is what makes me whole. So that just taking the shoulds away and asking what would be life-giving for me right now has really changed my whole attitude about, you know, it's like during the day, it's like, well, you know, what would be life-giving for me to do right now? Well, sometimes it's go take a nap.
Yeah,
I'm tired,
honestly.
Or go to bed early tonight. Or
That's the best thing you could do for yourself.
Yeah, or read a book. Pick up a book instead of doing social media and stuff like that. So that question, what would be life-giving right now, becomes a whole new way of looking at wholeness as we talk about. Yeah.
I like that. What would the creator want you to do? So for me, the creator, I guess I'm like your buddy Ralph, where it's more spiritual for me versus a religion.
Sure.
But for me, I see it as like, life energy, right? And everything that animates life, right? For me, that's God or spirituality for me, right? Sure. And what does life do? It makes more life.
Yeah, exactly.
It always has and it always will, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so then to ask that question, then what would the creator want? What would the creator want me to create life?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Or in the sense of what's going to give you life, what's going to give you that satisfaction, fulfillment in life.
Yeah, that sense of love.
The sense of love.
How do we love ourselves so that we can love others? Yeah. There's an interesting, Teilhard Chardin is a scientist. He died in the late 60s. He's was a priest and a scientist, and he wrote this whole theory of kind of a life vision. And again, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it made sense to me. He says that the universe was created, billions of years ago before there was ever matter. There was a spirit of love that existed, and the spirit of love was like, well, I'd really like to put my spirit of love into matter, into human beings, plants, animals, the clouds, the rain, and so
gravity.
Gravity. Yeah. So Teilhard would say that the Big Bang is when the great spirit of love literally burst forth, and the Big Bang was all these particles of love, little stardust that went into everything, and so everything contains that spirit of love, and the spirit of love always wants to create more and more. So that's and so whether it's creating other human beings or taking care of the universe or the earth or being compassionate with somebody that needs our care, it's always about how is that spirit of love moving and inviting us to grow, because love wants to create more love, basically.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that world vision of that, and that's our job in life, Teilhard would say, is to create more love in the world, however that is, in our own unique ways. So,
that makes sense. And so then that kind of leads to contemplative action, right?
Yeah.
Where you kind of, that action is love creating or love proponenting, being a proponent of love.
Exactly, yeah. So I call it contemplative action because it really takes the first three quadrants, solitude, spiritual reading, community, and says, okay, now that I've kind of found out who I am and what my purpose in life is, how am I going to go into the world and use my gifts to make the world a better place? So for me, it's really that spiritual gifts inventory that's part of that contemplative action. I grew up, in the Catholic faith and good intellectual foundation, and still practice my Catholicism, but it wasn't enough. I was trying to think my way to God. And in my 30s, I was like, I was happy being a lawyer, raising a family, loved him dearly, but I always felt there was something more. And so I stumbled upon the spiritual gifts inventory, and I took it, and I recognized what my top 5 gifts are: writing, encouraging, teaching, administration, and learning, basically. And it began as I took that spiritual gifts inventory.
That equals book.
Exactly. Eventually it did, yeah. And so here I'm at 63 years old writing my 3rd book, Finding Flow. But it started in my early 30s when I took that spiritual gifts inventory, so I could say, what are my current gifts? Because each one of us is uniquely wired. And then that really became a contemplative way of saying, okay, these are my gifts, and now how in this season of my life am I being used to use them? So as a lawyer in my early 30s, raising a family, I was using my gifts of teaching to do workshops and estate planning. I was writing, I write emails and legal documents and
that's
journaling, raising my family. But I knew there was something, further down the road, and that's I slowly began to take classes and move toward a kind of a second career. So in the Finding Flow book and on my website, there's specifically is a free spiritual gifts inventory, because I think it's so life-giving to really go back and say, there's like 60 questions on the inventory. It's available on brianplachta.com for free, and you answer the 60 questions, and it helps you determine, oh, these are Luciano's 5 top gifts. And then you begin to look at it and go, oh, I can see how I'm, in this season of life, being used to use them. My guess is, as a podcast person, one of your gifts is probably teaching and learning. It would be interesting. Have you had a chance to take the inventory?
I did not take that.
Yeah.
Oh man, that would have been pretty clutch if I had.
Yeah,
but,
I would invite you to go, and our listeners go back and take it, because it begins to, and then you sit down.
I would certainly say trying to learn is one of my skills.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's good. We're all beginners. The minute we think we got it together, we don't.
Shatters.
Yeah, the beginning. What do they call it? The beginner's mind that they say in the Eastern tradition. Yeah. But anyway, so that's that last quadrant is contemplative action, spiritual gifts. And so when we're using our gifts, we come alive. We feel good about it. We find our purpose in life. It's, we're not just sitting on the couch eating potato chips going, oh, this life stinks. We're actually saying, I feel like
in this economy?
Yeah, exactly. I'm contributing both in terms of enjoying what I'm doing, putting more love into the world, but also more self-respect, because I realize, wow, I'm really doing something that's helping the world become a better place. So
that's one of the things that giving to others, doing things for others is actually like a self it's altruistic, right? In that you are, but it also helps you. It's a selfish thing to do, to hold the door open for an old lady or anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? You hold the door for them, and you're like, this is for them.
Yeah.
But then you feel good about doing it.
Exactly.
And that's good. And that's life-giving, right? It's not like, should I feel this way? No, you
right.
should. That's why you should do more of it, because it makes you feel good, and it helps spread love.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's that giving and receiving when we're spreading love like that. It's like giving for us, because it builds ourselves. Yeah, wow, I'm helping this lady across the street, or opening the door for him, or and also it's helping her see that there is love and people care about each other in the world. Yeah,
that is kind of crazy too, because if I think back on some of the things you had, like nudges, thinking back.
God nudges.
So this is God. But if I think about what makes me feel like is why the world is positive. It was honestly like strangers at the supermarket being nice to my family when we were like, at Walmart or something at the store. We're at the bank, and someone was just like, "Oh my gosh, your kids are so well behaved. Can we have them, give them a lollipop or whatever?"
Exactly. Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh wow, people are very nice." Or, "Oh, you guys are in a hurry. Would you guys like to cut in front of us?"
Exactly.
And it's like, "Oh wow, thank you." Right. Yeah. And like this random things like that happened when I was growing up, and so I think that really influenced my worldview.
Yeah.
In the same way that you're saying now, that we can do that for other people too.
Exactly, and it doesn't need to be in this. Mother Teresa says, we don't have to do these huge acts.
You don't got to sell all your shoes.
Exactly.
I thought I had to do that one time.
Did you really?
Yeah, I almost did.
But we can do small acts with great amounts of love, basically. So that's the biggest thing is just. I think of the universe as a big, huge ocean, and if we pour one drop of love into the world, how it ripples out into other things and impacts others.
Yeah.
And so just like when someone opens the door or you open the door, it ripples out love into other people's lives and builds your own self-respect and purpose.
Yeah, that's right. Just like the light in the dark room, right?
Yeah.
Right, and then just even like smiling or waving to somebody can be like a way to really positively influence their day, and then positively influence other people's lives as well.
Exactly.
Even though it's a little small, you might not even see the impact of that right away.
Yeah, exactly.
And it might not even be an impact, but there's a chance that there is.
Yeah, and it doesn't. And you're right. That's a big
thing.
It doesn't need to have an impact. It's just a sense of it builds your self-esteem. I mean, we can let somebody.
This is who I am.
Yeah, like you can let somebody into traffic. When they're trying to get through, they may not even acknowledge us, but you feel good that. I did the right thing. I put some love into the world.
I did the right thing.
I did the right thing. I feel good about who I am.
Even if only I know about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's crazy. So those are kind of the 4 quadrants of a lifestyle practice. Again, the quiet time, I call it quiet time, solitude, whatever's life-giving for you on a daily basis, to get away from the world, get in connection, with your inner self and the divine within us, gaining wisdom and guidance. Spiritual reading, reading the books of the masters, as you say, that just a little further on the journey so we can gain wisdom from them. the other's community. Who do we surround ourselves with that helps us grow, that keeps us on track, that sometimes nudges us, kicks us in the butt a little bit. So you can do this, And then the last piece is that contemplative action, the spiritual gifts. What are my unique gifts, each one of us, and how am I being invited in the season of life to put some creativity, some love into the world to make the world a better place. So, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that really stuck out to me was early on, you kind of quoted, like, don't push the river, let the river flow.
Yeah, exactly.
I was kind of explaining right before we hit record that. That really hit me, right? Because, I definitely, I don't think I'm a control freak until all of a sudden I realize I am.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm in the same club. Yeah, exactly. One of my biggest, and for many of us, probably in the Western world, is always pushing. I need to do this and do this. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. It's part of who we are. There's that, it invites us to achieve excellence in our lives. But when we're pushing the river, now it's the shadow side of ourselves. We're trying to control the world. We're trying to jam. It's kind of, trying to put a, square peg in a round hole. And I found in my life, and I still do it, but I'm more aware of it. When I'm pushing the river, there's a lot more wasted energy because I'm trying to force something that maybe isn't where I'm supposed to be. When I flow with the river, it's like, okay, where's the movement of wisdom, where's the guidance, and that's where that quiet time comes in. It's like, okay, where am I allowing the flow to occur in my life? Yeah.
I think there's, you might not know what's happening next or what comes around the bend, but I think it's a bit of trust that you have what it takes to get past that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I did. So it kind of reminds me of literally on a river. We did. Some buddies and I did the upper Rogue up in Rockford.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Or no, lower Rogue because it's past the dam where it moves really fast.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's probably there's an hour-long stretch, maybe an hour and a half, where there's 6 to 8 different fast spots where you it's because you be chilling, hanging out, and you're laughing, joking. All of a sudden you hear the rapids coming up, and it's like, oh, and you gotta dial in.
Yeah,
you gotta dial in, right?
Sure.
You gotta pick a line, because if you pick the wrong line, you're gonna get stuck on the rocks.
Oh, boy.
You gotta pick the one that's you think is gonna give you the best chance of making it out with crashing into everybody and flipping your kayak over, right?
Yeah.
And we all got stuck once each. Right, just once each, though.
Sure,
just once each,
yeah.
right? And it was our first time, and it was so I was the most experienced kayaker on this trip.
Okay.
Which meant that I had to go first.
Oh, okay.
And I had never done anything
boy.
like this before in my life.
Oh,
I had never done rapids before. It was my first time on rapids,
Oh,
and everybody was my other buddies first or second time kayaking. And so I'm like, God, here I go,
Wow.
Yeah. But it turned out great. Everybody had a great time. I mean, a couple times we got stuck and had to figure it out.
Sure.
But we didn't know what was around the edge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I love that the river piece just really spoke to me, right?
And you think about it, I mean, nature speaks to us in so many metaphorical ways.
Yeah.
The river is like our lives. It's flowing and going along and stuff like that. And if we fight the river,
good luck.
Yeah, it's not going to work. It's going to flip us.
Yeah.
But if how's it? Like you said, you kind of where's the river flowing? How do I go? How do I maneuver here? Oh, I got stuck here. Got to change direction or paddle here.
Yeah.
But if we cooperate with the flow of the river,
cooperate with it,
nature and us as humans, we're in sync with that, and we move through it, and we have fun and enjoy it. Basically, everyone gets spilled a couple times and fight the river.
Exactly.
It's really a teacher. I mean, nature is such a teacher for us. Again,
tell you what, as soon as you think you're hot shit.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I hear you.
That's good.
Yeah.
But I think that's why it's important to have that kind of playfulness to it, right?
Yeah.
Because it is important to have that relationship with yourself, your spirit, and your environment, and the people around you.
Yeah.
It's very important, very, very. But also, you can't take it too seriously.
Yeah.
Right? You got to have fun, play with it.
Yeah. Both with ourselves and with other people in a relationship, our spouses, our girlfriends, boyfriend, whoever, our partners, our buddies, but also with God. I think we're recognizing. Again, very grateful for my Catholic foundation.
Yeah.
Very good.
Me too.
But it was so, many times, just growing up, it was so serious. It was all about thinking and doing the right things, and following all the right rules, and I shouldn't eat meat on Friday.
Bow your heads and be serious.
Yeah, and what I discovered is, that's not who God is. If God is love, the Creator is love. This, as Teilhard says, the universe, the structure of the universe is love. Then we can be in relationship with that divine love, and have fun. My biggest thing is, and so again, as we move from the intellectualizing our way to God, which has its limits, relationship, it becomes a fun relationship that grows deeper and deeper. We can seek wisdom. We can have, the other day I was walking my dog and it was icy, and the dog was kind of pulling, and I hit a spot, and I literally landed on my back and hit my head hard and heck. And I just, probably 5 years ago, I would have been swearing and I just looked up on the ground, and my dog's looking at my face, and I go, "Oh, Magoo," meaning the Creator, "you did it again. You're teaching me to slow down." And so it was this fun relationship that, not that God caused me to fall. My dog and my slippery feet caused it. But it was fun to just look and say, okay, what are you teaching?
Your speedy mind caused it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it was fun to, literally reflect then and throughout my quiet time the next days. What are you teaching me, Creator? And it was like, I'm trying to teach you to slow down. You're just pushing through life too hard. So give me, I'm trying to teach you patience. So it's fun to have, like you said, that playful relationship with ourselves, with our loved ones, but also with God as we understand God. It is meant to be a playful relationship.
That makes sense. But I think a lot of times, no matter what kind of stage you're at, or whether you're trying to focus on the reading or the community or the contemplative action, you can figure out if you're kind of on the right by listening.
Yeah, you can really, what I often do with myself and spiritual direction clients is, you can gauge, am I feeling inner peace, balance, and wholeness? Am I feeling that life is going good and smooth and flowing with the river? Then it means typically like a submarine has 4 chambers that hold the submarine down under the water, making work. Okay, I've got all 4 of these lifestyle practices. Pretty much, I'm doing them basically.
Where they need to be for where I want to be at.
Yeah, but if my life is going really yucky, it's like, well, I do that to myself. It's like, what's going on? I haven't read a book, and my mind is just, chasing itself, the monkey mind. So it's like, I think I need to pick up a good book now, a spiritual book, and so you can kind of use those 4 lifestyle practices and how you're feeling your life to see. It kind of like Goldilocks and 3 pairs. Is it just right? Are all 4? Am I using each one of them in a way that's life-giving for me, or is one empty? You can also get into the contemplative action. A lot of times we can just get so drained with doing that you go, you know what? I got to pull back on a couple of activities, so I have a little bit more contemplative time, solitude, and more fun time in the world, the God date, as I talk about in the book, to go out and...
I think that kind of plays into that, the fundamentals, right? Because, whenever I'm having a rough time, maybe I'm not sleeping right, or maybe I haven't exercised in a while, or maybe it is because I haven't read a book. One time I got a speeding ticket. And I was real upset, right? And I just started reading a lot. I was like, you know what? I haven't been reading a lot, and maybe it's just because you haven't. If I don't read, I'll get another speeding ticket. It's not like that, right? But it's I was getting away from what really made me me, and I would read a lot as a kid, right? And I wasn't rushed everywhere to go and do this and that. Right,
and so that awareness, I think, that's what these 4 practices they bring us aware to. Oh, this is what's going on. I haven't been reading. I'm rushing around too much. Can be you have to fall on the cement like I did.
Sometimes you do, man. Sometimes you really do, literally or figuratively. Right. I know, my dog. He's a little fun guy, but sometimes really tests my patience. Yeah. And I got to realize, wait a second. Am I going to be mad at this tiny little dog?
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm going to practice patience today.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm going to smile. And I'm going to take a deep breath. Yeah. And I'm going to do the right thing.
He's your teacher. everything
Exactly.
in our lives, it can be our teacher if we're aware of that.
Damn it, that little fella's nature.
What's his name?
His name's Herb.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, he's a funny little buddy.
That's great,
He's
yeah.
like half Chihuahua, half Corgi.
Oh,
So
cool.
he's I think he's got the best of both worlds, where he's friendly like a Corgi and kind of like small like a Chihuahua.
Okay.
And then he runs really fast.
Oh, there you go.
He runs too fast.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
There you go.
That's
There
the
you go.
problem, man.
That's great. Oh, too cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what else can, like, speaking of nature,
Sure.
how can nature kind of show us? What can nature show us?
Yeah.
Um,
So one of the things I read about in the book, and my buddy Ralph is very much into Native American tradition, and I think there's there's all universal truths, and we learn from every tradition. So the Native American tradition, as I read about in the book, this Jamie Sams, who's a wonderful spiritual Native American teacher, she says that in every every animal, there's a unique spirit or virtue. And when those animals appear in our lives, or it could be a river, anything in nature, she says the Creator is using that animal, that piece of nature, to invite us to adopt that spirit. So the deer, for example, is often a guide, and they're often a gentle spirit. So many times when I see run across a deer, because they kind of surprise you, and I'll go, okay, what's the totem? Is what the Native American. What's the totem that this animal? And as you look at it, it's the deer. Oftentimes says you're on the right track. So there's that spirit of gentleness, the fact that the deer, is playful and they can move and they know where they're going. So we can literally see nature as a metaphor, a symbol, a spirit that animal has that's speaking to us.
Interesting.
Have you ever had an experience in nature where you really felt like this animal or something like that just really spoke to you?
I don't know if it was an animal. I've had. It's more of like the meditative space, right? So I used to, in between classes, I went to Grand Valley, and I got to this point where I was really questioning like everything, right? And so I decided to spend a lot of time in nature. So in between classes, instead of reading books or like I was supposed to be doing, I was building forts in the woods by myself, taking pictures of the cool leaves and kind of just, and actually it was a person who had the most influence on me through that. And so at the time I was thinking about, I wanted to go to Michigan State.
Okay.
Right. I'm like, you know what? Grand Valley is very boring. I want to go get more stimulation. I want to go to Michigan State. I want to go to the big city. Yeah, exactly. And go have some real fun over there.
Yeah.
And I came across this dude, and at the time I was probably like 19. He was 30s, maybe 40s. Okay. And normally I didn't run into anybody back there.
Sure.
Right. And ran into somebody back there.
Wow, interesting.
This is interesting. Exactly. This is interesting.
Yeah.
And so his name was Scott, and so we got to know each other a little bit, started talking, and for some reason I just started telling him, everything I was feeling.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I was just like, yeah, dude. Like I told him, I want to go. I think I want to go to Michigan State, and where people are interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was like, well, man, like. Maybe you need to be that interesting person for people here.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
You mean, am I really taking the easy way out by saying this?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And so, but that only would have happened if I had only dedicated some time, realized I had to spend some time in nature, right? And I was in the right state of mind to really receive that feedback. I think because I was spending time in nature and contemplative about it, and really just trying to be quiet and listen to myself, and turn my phone off.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Much to the chagrin of my roommates or anybody else who was trying to get a hold of me.
And I would say that's a God nudge. I call it. When something surprises a person, something in nature, it's all of a sudden there's like it just surprises and pops in. It's like. I mean, what he said to you, and did you stay at Grand Valley then?
I did. I stayed there, and I was like, well, dang.
Yeah.
I think that even influenced how I started this podcast too, where it's like, it's be that change you want to see in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and kind of what we talked about earlier of not being afraid to really be yourself. right? I mean, I've been an entertainer since I was a little kid.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, yeah. And so I'm not about to move to Hollywood, but what I can do is make a podcast right here and have nice conversations with people in coffee shops that lead to podcasts.
Yeah, there you
right?
go.
Because that's what I do and that's what I like.
That is
And
cool.
and it gives me life, right?
Yeah.
And it helps me share with other people what I learned because I meet people all the time.
Yeah, and so there's a sense of, there's this fancy word called discernment. Where is the Spirit moving us in our lives, and how we follow? It's not a head thing; it's more of a heart thing. And so, the sense is as I mentioned in the book, Richard Hauser says, discernment is the belief that God is always moving us toward our highest good, and the goal is to kind of just listen and figure out where's God moving. So you heard the call to nature. You had, and you spent some time in nature. You wouldn't have met Scott in
Wouldn't
nature.
have met him.
So that was a God nudge to go into nature. And all of a sudden Scott comes along, and you were in a space, like you said, to listen. And the God nudge, he gave you some wisdom. You could have walked away from what he said and fought the river.
Who's this clown?
Who's this jerk? And gone to Michigan State. And maybe had But what you ended up doing was he gave you some wisdom, a God nudge that you then followed. And look at you, now you're doing this podcast and being the change you want to see in the world through your conversation.
Some days more than others.
Yeah,
but I'll be honest with you. I don't wanna, but yeah, exactly. And that, and I think that really does speak to me, kind of because we're looking for the fundamentals, right? And you did do your damnedest to put those fundamentals into this book.
Yeah, you really did.
Right?
Yeah. This has been the hardest. I've written 3 books. And the first were self-published. This one is published by Paulus Press. This book, Elizabeth Gilbert says that if your art does not almost kill you, then it's not good art. And
Interesting.
It took me over 1.5 years to write this book, and it was fun, but but there are also those times sitting in my studio where I write, going, okay, come on, give me. I'm going to sit here.
What am I doing?
I'm going to sit here. I've got the computer in front of me, and if you want to show up, Divine Muse, and give me what you want me to say, I'm going to write it. But I'm going to sit here until you decide. I have my little Tigger there, basically. But yeah, there is that sense of relationship, and
flowing with the river.
Yeah, and following the river, and finding some basic concepts, a template. I look at these 4 quadrants of lifestyle practices. I mean, they're not one size fits all for everybody, but it seems to me, if you look at the wise men and women of our current
What's
age,
the throughput?
What's that?
What's the throughput? What's the line that connects all of these things, right?
Yeah.
It might not be a literal thing, but what is the sentiment? What's the intention that they're
And the
trying to
interesting
convey?
thing is, one of the things that's very interesting is Thomas Merton in the early 60s was a Trappist monk. He had a really crazy life and doing all kinds of stupid things, and as we all do, being a cowboy. But he ultimately became a monk, and he wrote about contemplation. And what he really took was the Eastern tradition, Asia, and that they really are very contemplative. They spend time in the quiet, and we've lost that in our Western tradition. And so Merton literally, many would believe, ushered the whole sense of that quiet time, meditation, contemplation, and being in nature into our Western culture. And he died in the 68 I think it was, but his writings have really influenced. And what he says is, that's the movement of the divine spirit inviting us into Western culture to move away from the noise and distractions for a period of time and live what he calls the active and contemplative life. So it's kind of the Martha and Mary in the New Testament. The Mary part of our lives is getting away from the distractions for a period of time, and then moving into the active part of our day. So we literally become the prayer basically from the contemplative part. So many would say that this movement in our culture right now, just reading one of my blogs that I write every Monday, I have some statistics that over 500 million people in the world have developed a meditation practice
Of some sort or another.
one sort or another.
Interesting.
And so my sense is I know there's a lot of negative stuff on the news, and
there's some chaos,
but there always is. But if we look at what's really happening,
That's
in
the
bigger
news's job.
picture, yeah, exactly, yeah, sensationalize it.
Right.
What's happening? My sense is we're being drawn into move away from the noise of the world, not permanently,
Right.
but to find that quiet time to listen and really connect with ourselves, connect with our spirit, gain wisdom, kind of take the monkey mind, let it sink into the heart so that they're working together.
Yeah.
Even science, one of the chapters in there is about the heart. There's this whole thing, a Heart Math Institute. The scientists are discovering that our heart is really the center of our being. And the heart has a brain of its own, and it informs the mind as to, gives it neurons, and it really is the heart of who we are. And so they're supposed to work together. And so it's that sense of we're moving in a contemplative space, more in the heart space, so the heart and mind connect with each other, and we can get that divine intuition, that wisdom, that guidance, that affirmation that we need to live whole lives.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
One of the things in there was that meditative thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's, hang on, what was it? There's like imaginary and centering prayer / meditation.
Yeah. So many would say that there's really kind of, certainly more than that, but there's 3 types of prayer. There's traditional prayer, which is good stuff. Traditional
Bless us, O Lord.
Yeah, exactly. Our Father, the Hail Mary, whatever, glory be. And saying the Rosary if you're Catholic. But as Protestant, it might be traditional prayer is reading the Bible and trying to intellectualize it. Well, all good stuff, nothing wrong with that. But it has its limits because it's all head stuff and we're in control. Right. What's now happening is a second form of prayer, which is centering prayer. And Father Thomas Keating is another priest that brought that into the Western culture, where centering prayer is you just take a word. So, if you sit quietly, your mind's just going to go, the monkey mind, I call it. You've got to give it a banana, as I said,
Right, yeah, centering on the breathing, right, is the banana you give it.
Or a word, something, so it could be just focusing on your breath as a way, kind of like, when you're fishing in a rowboat, the water's drifting a little bit, but you have an anchor down so that the anchor kind of keeps you centered. So the word or your breath centers you back into just kind of creating that empty space so you can listen and let the monkey mind just kind of quiet down. So centering prayer would be another type of prayer. And then imaginative prayer, or integral prayer, is where we literally, we kind of, you might take one of my favorite scriptures, or it could be just a reading too, something not in the Bible, but there's the image of John leaning against Jesus's chest at the Last Supper. They finish the meal, and Judas is gone. He's going to betray him. Jesus knows what's going to happen, and there's this moment where John is literally leaning against Jesus, and just a filial, brotherly, way of love, basically. And so many times in my imaginative prayer, when I just kind of feel like I need you to be present to me, God, I'll imagine that I'm John leaning against Jesus' chest.
Give you a big old hug, Jesus.
Come on, brother. Give me some love. But in that imagination, we allow our mind, body, spirit to really feel the loving presence. There's
that makes sense.
Of the divine with us, loving us.
There was like a study where they had like 3 groups. One group practiced their jump shots, basketball.
Oh, yeah.
One group don't do anything, and one group imagined practicing the jump shots.
And
the group that spent time imagining practicing their jump shots did almost as well as the group that actually physically practiced it.
Yeah, that visioning, that imagining, as you say. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's another type of that you can do in that contemplative space, is that imaginative prayer. And to me, I like the imaginative better because
of course
it
can be
creates,
anything.
Yeah, it can be anything. Yeah, sometimes I have, not that there's an audible voice, but sometimes I have a conversation with God.
Sure.
Not audible, but I'll ask questions if I have a problem. In a relationship. God, what should I do with this? And maybe not immediately then in the quiet time, but slowly, maybe in the middle of the day, the answer will reveal itself because I've kind of opened my heart to that intuitive space within me.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the wisdom. I'm not trying to think my way through it, which is,
right.
If I'm mad at somebody, I'm going to go beat the crap out of them. Well, that's probably not the most life-giving thing.
It's not so much having the answers, but having the questions.
Yeah. Margaret Gunther says that the spiritual life is about asking the questions so we can live into the answers.
Yeah.
Not having the answers. Because then it's a head thing. If we think, I have the answer, I need to do
back
this.
to the ego.
Yeah.
And performing.
Yeah, it's fighting the river again.
And fighting the river, exactly.
Not letting it flow. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, we're almost up on the hour.
Super, yeah.
This was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Good
Is there anything else that you might want to share?
No, my hope is that, that people will, in their own way, develop this, whatever their tradition, whatever spiritual but not religious, whatever it is. But I think one of the issues I think in our culture right now, and in many cultures, is we've moved away from that spiritual aspect. I mean, let's face it, some of our faith traditions have kind of screwed us up in different ways. Rather than throwing the baby out with the bathwater,
That's the trick.
We don't move just into the secular world, because where's that getting us right now? It's just all fighting the river and
Right.
my way or the highway, and there's not peace in there. It's my sense is that's why I wrote the book. Is my hope is that people will use these 4 lifestyle practices to really develop their own relationship with God as they understand Him, the universe, the Creator, whatever it is. Because then it's going back to Teilhard, we become the incarnation of love in the world, and that's so exciting.
Yeah.
This conversation is exciting because you're using your gifts and I'm using mine, and hopefully the people that are listening are gaining some universal truths.
It gives me life. It gives you life.
Yeah.
And
Hopefully our viewers.
hopefully, for the love of God, it gives other people life too.
Exactly. So
This has
thank
been
you
awesome,
for what
Brian.
you're doing. Yeah, I appreciate it.
And that is a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Luciano Cast. This was a really fun episode, and I really hope you guys liked it. Don't forget to go to brianplachta.com, check out the book Finding Flow, and leave us a good review on the Luciano Cast. With that, go forth and for the love of God, prosper. Peace.